Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming today. You got to be kidding me. Well, that was real classy. This meeting today, or this press conference, is mainly because I wanted to, number one, share with you that we are the same city that we were last week. And that city is a city that respects everyone, that welcomes everyone, that accords the basic human rights to everyone. And we are not a city that wants to discriminate. We are not a city who wishes to bring any hurt upon anyone. So it's important because Coeur d'Alene has experienced that before. We're not going back to the days of the Aryan nations. We are past that, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we continue to stay past those kinds of problems. If you were around in those days, or if you recall, with the help of a lot of citizens in this community and the Southern Poverty Law Center and other groups, we were able to completely rid ourselves of that group and the kind of awful culture that they were trying to present to our community. We are a culture of love, of kindness, and we will continue to be. Now, this morning, if you're expecting a lot of breaking news, I'm sorry, you won't get that. What you will get is an opportunity to visit with me and with Chief White regarding the situation as to where we are right now. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any new information to provide to anybody this morning. We've been receiving a number of comments, though, and questions that maybe I can address before we start getting questions individually. One of the questions I get is what additional information we can release about the events on Saturday. I would tell you that the investigation process is ongoing. We obviously still have a lot of work to do in terms of writing reports and linking individual body camera videos with individuals who were arrested in the property that was associated with those individuals. And so that process is ongoing and likely will not be completed for some time. The other questions I've been getting, really not from from our law enforcement partners, but from the press, is how has the community been handling this? I will tell you that I had one of our captains assigned to listening to all the phone calls this morning, and of the 149 calls that we know of so far that have come in, they're about 50-50 split between individuals in our community who are happy to give us their name and tell us that they're proud of the work that we did and they're happy to be a part of this community, and the other 50% who are completely anonymous and who want nothing more than to scream and yell at us and use some really choice words, offer death threats against myself and other members of the police department merely for doing our jobs. Those people obviously remain anonymous and don't tell us where they're from, although we had a call as far away as Norway. I think it's my impression so far that the majority of the supportive things that we're receiving are coming from members of our community, which, as Mayor Hammond just spoke about, is a fantastic place. And then we obviously have the hate groups from outside that are giving us their opinion as well. With that, like I said, I don't have any new information to present, but I will stand for questions.
Before you do ask questions, if I can interrupt for just a moment, I failed to recognize Chief White and his staff for the excellent preparation that they did prior to this gathering on Saturday. They did the research, they paid heed to any concerns that were brought forth to them, and they were well prepared, even though it was a citizen that caught these folks that were climbing into the truck. The chief made sure that there was sufficient personnel to deal with this kind of issue, and as the mayor and as a member of this community, I'm very appreciative of you and your staff. Thank you very much for all that preparation and for taking care of us in this community. Now, you could go after it.
Yes, sir. Is this for me or the mayor?
For you. I saw on Twitter somebody reporting that on other social media platforms, on far-right platforms, that people were doxing police officers'
Yes.
information. Can you comment on that?
We've received threats of it. I'm sure it's ongoing. There's not a lot that I can say about it at this point.
I have another question.
Sure.
As far as weapons go that were found on the scene, we heard riot gear and one smoke grenade, but no firearms whatsoever. Is there anything there that you can tell us?
I can't provide further comment on that. I gave everything I had yesterday. I'm sorry.
So when will they be in court? My understanding is that they've all bonded out, right?
That's my understanding as well. That's a separate agency that handles that. We basically booked them into the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department or Sheriff's Office, jail, and then from there the process is handled separate from our agency. They will be given dates to appear in court, and our city prosecutor will be able to answer questions regarding that.
So will they show up in person, do you know, or video?
I can't answer that, ma'am. That's got to go to the city prosecutor. Yes, sir?
Was the police department familiar with this particular group before Saturday, and to what extent, if so?
You know, we hadn't had any issues with that group here previously. There were a number of us that were aware of this group because of you'd seen a video online, or it would be mentioned in relation to another subset of a hate group in this area or something of that nature. But I have never seen that type of activity in this area in my 8 years working for this police department. Yes, ma'am.
Can we get the 911 calls that were made or calls that were made to you guys?
Sure. The reports and the body camera video and everything else will be made available as soon as we can. Obviously, there's a process that we have to go through first, and once the prosecutor is set for that to happen, then all that will be released.
Is it possible to at least get in touch with the person that made the call so we can read off that person?
No. Two things there. Number one, since myself and other members of our agency have been receiving threats, including death threats, I think it's appropriate that we withhold that person's information at this time. So speaking with our legal counsel, that information is, to the extent we can, under Idaho law, redacting that individual's information. Yes, sir.
At what point leading up to the event this weekend was any intelligence in the police department that you had regarding the Patriot Front? And at what point did the feds contact you and partner up in that regard?
So we didn't have any information about Patriot Front coming prior to the individual caller who called us on Saturday. We had information that there were, anytime you have an event like this, there's opposing groups who decide to make some threats. We were taking each of those threats not only on its face, but also we take them seriously, even though some of them appeared to be just anonymous internet stuff. So we staffed the event appropriately. We had some information that there might be some individuals who are loosely affiliated with some of the groups who were planning to protest the Pride event that day, and so we were adequately staffed for it. But we didn't have any intelligence that there was going to be a riotous group coming to this event prior to the 911 call we received.
Just a follow-up question on that, sir.
Are you with the media, sir?
I'm not. I'm a citizen.
Okay, I'm going to ask the media questions here first.
Question, sir. Online, there was an officer of yours that was filmed stating that there was information and embedded feds or informants within that group. Is there any veracity to that? It was an officer of yours that made that statement on the scene.
No, I think you're completely mistaken. So let me be very, very clear. Let me be very clear here. These were not law enforcement officers that we arrested. These were members of the hate group Patriot Front. These were not Antifa in disguise, nor were they FBI members in disguise.
That wasn't my question, sir. My question was regarding the video that's showing online of one of your officers making the statement, contrary to what you're saying, that you were aware that there was embeds and so on and so forth. I'm not making an assertion one way or the other. I'm just simply suggesting that when you come to a press conference and you're making a statement one way, and this video isn't something that was been ginned up in some conspiracy matter. It's actually someone who videoed an officer of yours on the scene.
Okay, so two things. Number one, I have not seen the video and the comments that you're speaking about because I have not heard that comment made in any of the videos that I've watched regarding that incident. I was on scene at the stop the entire time. My body cam video will be available once it's appropriate, once everything's being released. You're not going to hear that comment coming from me or any of my command staff, so I'm not sure where that comment came from. And secondly, hang on, since this is a press conference, I'm going to ask you to be quiet and I'm going to answer questions from the press at this point. Yes, ma'am.
So as a misdemeanor, conspiracy to riot, what are the possible penalties for that? And is your department working on other charges other than conspiracy to riot?
The charges should be the penalties should be outlined in Idaho Code. I don't know what those are off the top of my head without going back and referring to the code and reading them, but we can certainly give that question to our city prosecutor's office for him to answer for you.
And other charges?
The investigation, like I said, we still have so much paperwork to go through, and we just got done executing a number of search warrants on the U-Haul and then some other vehicles that were seized, and so that we still have a bunch of work to do. I can't comment further on the investigation process at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any comment on why the bond was so low, $300?
There's a bond schedule that's established by the courts. We don't get to choose that, so that would be a question for the courts. Yes, ma'am.
Was there any correlation between the group that you guys, found in the van versus some of the people that were out at the event with weapons?
I can't speak to that. I don't have any information one way or the other. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, did you mention that other vehicles were seized in addition to the U-Haul?
There were. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us how many?
No, ma'am.
Can you identify which press you're with when you ask your question, please?
Yes, sir.
Alex Peebles, KHQ, Spokane. Is the FBI involved in the investigation in any way at this point?
The FBI, we had an FBI member in our command post that day, just because we think it's important to bring all our agency partners. We had just the one person from the FBI. We had some members from the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department, of course. We had some liaison work that was going back between us and the Parks Department and the Streets Department for issues that might arise. They weren't in the command post all day, but we were certainly in contact with them. We had members from the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department and the Idaho State Police all in the command post. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about any lessons that came from this arrest? Any lessons that you learned?
I would tell you that the biggest lesson I think that we have for not only members of our community, but law enforcement in general and our public as a whole, is that one concerned citizen can prevent something horrible from happening. This one concerned citizen, rather than pulling out their phone and videotaping this for their 15 minutes on YouTube or Snapchatting it or something like that, took the time to call 911 and report some suspicious activity. And as a result, we likely stopped a riot from happening downtown. Yes, ma'am.
Karen with NBC Network News. On Saturday, I believe it was, you mentioned operational paperwork, plans, military operation, police operation. The New York Times has detailed that some of those plans saying that a column forming on the outside of the park proceeding inward until barriers to approach are met, and once an appropriate amount of confrontational dynamic has been established, then the column will disengage and head to Sherman. Can you confirm that that was part of the paperwork that you found, and can you explain what Sherman might refer to?
Yeah, that's not verbatim, but that is very close to the operational paperwork that I read that day. It also included the use of a smoke grenade once an appropriate level of confrontation was met by that group. Sherman Avenue is the downtown corridor that's immediately adjacent to City Park, and it's basically just north of where we sit. It's largely consisted of small businesses and shops and taverns and things of that nature.
And a follow-up, if I can. So would the expectation be that the confrontational dynamic would have been with police officers that were there on scene staffing the event, or?
I can't speak to that. It didn't delineate which group exactly, whether it's law enforcement or the Pride people that they were planning to confront. It was more vague than that.
Why stop them at the time you stopped them?
The information that we had would lead any reasonable officer to assume that there might be criminal activity afoot, based not only on the 911 call, but the information contained within the call about the weapons that they were seen loading and the riot gear and things of that nature. We made a command decision to make the stop prior to them getting downtown to prevent a riot from happening. As it turns out, the stop occurred less than a quarter mile from City Park. I have no doubt in my mind that had that van stopped at the park or much near the park, that we still would have ended up in a riot situation. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that can be said as to why this group picked Coeur d'Alene?
I don't have that information at all. My guess is that since there was so much rhetoric online about the two opposing groups exercising their viewpoints and things of that nature, that this became a flashpoint, but I'm really not sure why they picked Coeur d'Alene out of all the other Pride events that are occurring in the U.S.
And then a follow-up to that, looking ahead to summer events, other events going on in Coeur d'Alene, what do you say to the community when you encourage people to come out?
Well, two things. Obviously, your question earlier, if you see something suspicious, please report it to us. Secondly, I would encourage people not to get too spun up about some of the online things they read. You have to understand that the majority of these anonymous comments come in from people who are just looking to get a response out of individuals, and frankly, they probably succeeded for some people who chose not to participate in the Pride event on Saturday. I wish that wasn't the case. I'm glad the event happened because the organizers indicated that they had a great event. Likewise, the Prayer in the Park event. I'm happy that that went off as well. It's not our jobs here as law enforcement to take sides or support one viewpoint or the other. We are required to remain completely apolitical and neutral, and that's what we do in our jobs, and that's what we did in this enforcement action. I would tell you that whether the van was loaded full of people who are part of that far-right hate group, or if it was loaded with people who from Antifa, for instance, who wanted to come and riot, it would be handled exactly the same. I'm hopeful that members of our community they view this as a one-off, and they continue to come down and enjoy their time in our city and our parks. Yes, ma'am. I'll take just two more, and then I'll turn it back over. Go ahead.
Nicole with Coeur, wondering if we can know where that U-Haul was rented from and who rented it.
I don't have that information on hand. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll take three more. Go ahead. We'll just hit this front line. Go ahead.
This is your job, going and stopping this type of event from happening. You were on scene on Saturday. Did you know when you threw open that U-Haul door what you would be facing? And maybe just talk me through a little bit of what was going through your mind at that moment when the door opened and maybe you didn't know what you were going to face.
We really didn't. Although the comments that we were receiving from the individual who called in and the description that was given, we knew that we would be facing a crowd of people who were who might pose some difficulty for us. I would tell you that me personally, along with some of the officers that were there on scene that day, I think some of us were a bit surprised by not only the level of preparation that we saw, but the equipment that was carried and worn by those individuals, along with the large amount of equipment that was left in the van when the stop happened. That level of preparation is not something you see every day. It was very clear to us immediately that this was a riotous group that had prepared in advance to come downtown and disrupt either the Pride event or the Prayer in the Park event, or just riot downtown in Sherman. We didn't know that at that point, but it was clear to all of us that there was some ill intent there. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, have any of these men been linked to other far-right groups?
I can't comment on that just yet. I'm sorry. We have not got that far down the road yet.
That's okay. And then my final question is, since the majority are not from this state, and if they do go back to their home state, what will the police's role be in making sure that they do appear at future court dates?
Well, if they fail to appear, just like in any other misdemeanor crime, a warrant will be issued for their arrest. The process beyond that is depending on really the judge and the prosecutor's office, what happens with it.
Any comment on if you'll push it to make it a federal case to where federal law enforcement will come make sure that they come back
That's really not my role. I'm just working in cooperation with our city prosecutor at this point. Yes, sir.
So as you look ahead for 4th of July, Harding Green, and the others, does this elevate your threat level for summer gatherings this year?
We were prepared for a pretty busy summer anyway. We have just about all of our staff working not only for Coeur d'Alene next weekend, but obviously a great number of our officers working for the Ironman event that takes place the weekend after that. And per usual, everybody who works in the city of Coeur d'Alene as a police officer works 4th of July. Our planning might be changed a little bit from what it was last year, but even last year we were prepared for as much as we could be for a difficult day. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief White. I think it's very important, because of your question, that we emphasize that Coeur d'Alene is a safe city. And that isn't just the mayor saying that. I can document that with all the evidence that's provided by our police department in terms of the statistics and the reports of every activity that they're involved in. And we are still a very safe city. As a resident of this community, I feel very safe anywhere in this community. And with that, I want to thank you very much for coming and visiting with us today. Thank you.